The sound of a chair scraping violently across the classroom floor sliced through the chatter. Everyone turned. Lena Carter was already on her feet, her notebook clutched tightly against her chest, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure the entire room could hear it. A few seconds earlier, she had been seated quietly at the back of the class, mind racing with ideas she didn't dare say out loud. Now all eyes were on her. "Say that again," Mr. Hawthorne said sharply from the front of the room, his arms crossed, lips curled in something between a smirk and disbelief. "You said you want to be what?" Lena swallowed. Her throat felt dry but she forced the words out. "I want to build my own company someday. I don't want to work for anyone." A ripple of laughter moved through the classroom like a wave. Someone snorted. Someone else whispered, "Yeah, right?" Mr. Hawthorne laughed openly this time, shaking his head. "That's not a career plan," he said. "That's a fantasy." Lena felt her face burn. She tried to sit back down but he raised his hand, stopping her. "No, stay standing," he said. "Let's use this as a teaching moment." The laughter grew louder. Mr. Hawthorne paced slowly in front of the class. "Some of you need to understand something early in life," he said. "Not everyone is cut out for success. Statistics exist for a reason." Lena's fingers tightened around her notebook. He turned and looked straight at her. "People like you don't become successful. You should focus on surviving, not dreaming." The room went dead silent for half a second. Then the laughter exploded. Lena felt something crack inside her chest. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to scream. Instead, she stood there, frozen, as every cruel second stretched longer than the last. "You can sit down," Mr. Hawthorne said casually, already turning back to the board. "Let's get back to reality." The bell rang seconds later, saving her from whatever came next. Chairs scraped. Students poured out, still laughing, still whispering. No one looked back at her. Lena sat there long after the room emptied, staring at the words on the whiteboard without seeing them. Her ears rang. Her eyes burned. She told herself not to cry. Crying would mean he won. When she finally stood up, her legs felt weak. She walked out of the classroom with her head down, but inside her chest, something ugly and powerful was forming. That afternoon, the bus ride home felt longer than usual. The cracked vinyl seat stuck to her legs as she stared out the window, replaying his words over and over again. "People like you don't become successful." Her neighborhood greeted her with peeling paint, broken fences, and the familiar smell of fried oil and dust. Kids played soccer in the street with a flattened ball. Someone shouted from a window. Life went on uncaring. Their apartment was small and dim. Lena dropped her bag by the door and found her mother at the kitchen table, surrounded by unpaid bills. "You're late," her mother said gently. "There was extra work," Lena replied, avoiding her eyes. Her mother studied her for a moment. "Did something happen at school?" Lena shook her head too quickly. "No." But later that night, lying on her mattress with the ceiling fan rattling above her, Lena finally let the tears fall. She pressed her face into her pillow so her mother wouldn't hear. She thought about Mr. Hawthorne's clean suit, his confident voice, the way everyone had laughed because he had given them permission to. He didn't know her. He didn't know how many nights she stayed up sketching ideas in the margins of her notebooks. He didn't know how many times she'd watched her mother count coins just to buy groceries. And yet, with one sentence, he had reduced her to nothing. The next day at school, Lena felt invisible. Whispers followed her down the hallway. Someone muttered, "Dreamer," under their breath. She kept walking. In economics class, Mr. Hawthorne never looked at her. It was worse than being mocked. It was as if she no longer existed. After school, instead of going straight home, Lena went to the library. The building was old and smelled faintly of dust and paper, but it had something her home didn't: free internet. She sat in front of a computer and stared at the screen, unsure of what she was even looking for. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. "People like you don't become successful." Her jaw tightened. She typed, "How to make money online." Hours passed without her noticing. She read articles, watched videos, scribbled notes. Something sounded fake. Something sounded impossible. But buried among them were real stories. People who started with nothing, people who failed, people who tried again. When the librarian announced closing time, Lena jumped, startled. She shut down the computer and gathered her things, her mind buzzing. That night, she told her mother she needed to use the library more often. "For studying?" her mother asked. "Yes," Lena said. It wasn't a lie. Not entirely. Days turned into weeks. Lena spent every free moment at the library learning, experimenting, trying small ideas that went nowhere. She created something online that earned her $5. Then 10. Then nothing. She failed quietly. No applause. No laughter. Just her and the screen. One evening, exhausted, she slammed the library computer shut and rested her head in her hands. Maybe he was right, she whispered to herself. The thought scared her more than anything. Graduation crept closer. College counselors called her name and waited for her to list schools she hadn't applied to. Friends talked about dorms and futures that seemed planned and safe. "What are you doing after school?" one girl asked her. "I'm figuring it out," Lena replied. She could feel the judgment in the silence that followed. Mr. Hawthorne stopped her after class one day. "I heard you're not applying to college," he said, his tone neutral. "I'm not," Lena replied. He nodded slowly. "Probably for the best." She looked up at him, then really looked at him, and something inside her hardened completely. That night, Lena sat on her bed and made a decision. Not a wish. Not a hope. A decision. She would prove him wrong. Even if it took years. Even if no one believed her. Even if she failed 100 times. She opened her notebook and wrote one sentence on the first page, pressing the pen so hard it nearly tore through the paper. "They said I'd never make it." She underlined it twice. And beneath it she wrote, smaller but steadier, "Watch me." The first real failure hit Lena harder than she expected. She had spent 3 months building what she thought was her breakthrough. Late nights in the library, weekends hunched over borrowed laptops, teaching herself skills she didn't even know had names. When she finally launched it, she refreshed the page over and over, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did, for days. Then weeks. Her first customer emailed asking for a refund. Then another. Then another. The little money she'd made vanished, and the small savings she'd hidden under her mattress followed right after. One evening, she sat on the library steps with her head in her hands, staring at the cracked concrete. "This was stupid," she muttered. Her phone buzzed. A message from her mother. "Did you eat?" Lena typed back yes, even though she hadn't. She couldn't bring herself to go home yet. Home meant questions. Concern. Bills spread across the table. Her mother already carried too much. She stayed until the sun dipped low, then walked home slowly, dragging her feet. When she opened the door, her mother looked up from the couch. "You look tired," she said. "I'm fine," Lena replied, heading straight for her room. But that night the walls felt closer than usual. The fan rattled. Her thoughts wouldn't stop. "People like you don't become successful." She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to block out the voice. Weeks later, desperation pushed her into trusting the wrong person. An online contact promised fast growth, easy money, a shortcut. Lena hesitated, then sent what little she had left. The account disappeared the next day. She stared at the screen in disbelief, refreshing again and again until her chest tightened and her vision blurred. "No, no, no, no," she whispered. She slammed the laptop shut and slid down against the wall, pulling her knees to her chest. For the first time since that classroom moment, she cried openly, her shoulders shaking. She had nothing now. No savings. No plan. Just exhaustion and shame. At school, graduation rehearsal felt unreal. Students laughed, took photos, talked about the future. Lena stood among them, silent. "So what's your big plan, CO?" a boy teased loud enough for others to hear. She forced a smile. "You'll see." He laughed. "Sure." Mr. Hawthorne stood at the front, organizing papers. His eyes flicked to her briefly, then away. That was all it took to make her stomach twist. Graduation day came and went. Caps were thrown. Parents cheered. Her mother cried as she hugged her tightly. "I'm proud of you," she said. "For what?" Lena asked softly. "For not giving up," her mother replied without hesitation. That night, Lena lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow there would be no school. No library computers guaranteed. No structure. Fear crept in. The following months were brutal. Without school, Lena took a part-time job at a small grocery store to help her mother. She worked early mornings and late nights, coming home exhausted, her hands aching. "You don't have to do this," her mother said one evening as Lena counted her pay. "I do," Lena replied. "Just for now." She still worked on her ideas, squeezing in time between shifts, borrowing Wi-Fi, reading on her phone whenever she could. Progress was slow. Painfully slow. One night, after a 16-hour day, Lena collapsed onto her bed and stared at the wall. "What if this is it?" she whispered. What if he was right? She imagined Mr. Hawthorne standing at the front of the classroom, shaking his head. The memory burned. "No," she said aloud, sitting up. "I decide." She tried again. And again. Another failure. Then another. She launched something small that barely worked. She adjusted, improved, relaunched. This time a stranger messaged her. Is this still available? Her heart raced as she typed back. Yes. The payment notification chimed. She stared at the screen, frozen. It wasn't much, but it was real. She laughed out loud, startling her mother in the next room. What happened? Her mother called. I made it, Lena said, grinning through tears. I made something. From that moment she doubled down. She refined her skills, learned from mistakes, listened more than she talked. The money came slowly at first, then steadier. She quit the grocery store a year later. Her mother cried again, this time with relief. Years passed quietly. Lena didn't announce her wins. She didn't post online about success. She remembered too well how laughter felt. Her business grew, then multiplied. She hired her first employee, then her second. One afternoon, sitting in a small rented office, her accountant slid a paper across the desk. You're officially a millionaire, he said, smiling. Lena stared at the number, feeling oddly calm. There was no cheering, no dramatic reaction, just a deep, steady breath. That night, she went home and hugged her mother tightly. We're okay now, Lena said softly. Across town, Mr. Hawthorne sat alone in the teacher's lounge, scrolling through his phone. Budget cuts had been announced earlier that day. He frowned, uneasy. Teaching wasn't what it used to be. Respect had faded. Students questioned everything. Administration kept changing rules. For the first time in years, doubt crept in. Meanwhile, Lena received an email she hadn't expected. Invitation to speak. Career day. She stared at the screen, her heartbeat quickening. The school logo stared back at her. Her old school. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She almost deleted the email. Then she remembered the laughter. The words. The silence afterward. She typed one word. Yes. Lena almost didn't go back. She sat in her car across the street from the school, engine off, hands resting on the steering wheel as students streamed through the gates. Their laughter floated through the air, careless and light, the same way it had years ago when she'd been sitting in those same halls feeling small. Her phone buzzed. You're already here. Just walk in, she told herself. She took a breath and stepped out. The hallway smelled exactly the same, cleaner mixed with old books and something metallic. Lockers slammed. Sneakers squeaked against the floor. A group of girls rushed past her, complaining about homework, unaware they were living inside someone else's memories. Excuse me, a voice said. She turned to see a teacher carrying a stack of papers. He nodded politely and moved on. No recognition. Her chest tightened. The principal met her near the office, beaming. Lena, we're so excited to have you. Thank you for inviting me, Lena said, forcing a smile. As they walked toward the auditorium, a familiar voice floated down the hallway. Discipline builds character. Dreams without structure lead nowhere. Lena slowed. Her fingers curled slightly. Mr. Hawthorne stood in a classroom doorway, lecturing with the same confidence he always had. His posture was rigid, his voice steady, his words absolute. She watched for a moment. He hadn't changed much. Older, yes, but still certain he knew who would succeed and who wouldn't. The bell rang. Students rushed out, brushing past her. Mr. Hawthorne stepped into the hallway, flipping through a folder. He looked straight at Lena and kept walking. She stood there stunned. To him, she wasn't even memorable enough to place. Are you okay? The principal asked. Lena nodded slowly. Yes. Let's do this. The auditorium buzzed with restless energy. Students whispered, phones glowing briefly before teachers hushed them. Lena stood behind the curtain, palms damp, heart racing. You're not that girl anymore, she reminded herself. When her name was announced, she walked onto the stage. Applause followed, polite but curious. I used to sit right where you are, Lena said, scanning the room. In the back. Quiet. Watching. Some students leaned forward. I didn't come from much, she continued. And I didn't have a clear path. She spoke about long nights, rejection, failure. About doubting herself. About trying again. In the back row, Mr. Hawthorne stood with his arms crossed, listening with mild interest. A student raised her hand. Did people ever tell you to give up? Lena paused. Yes, she said. Very clearly. The room went still. They told me I was unrealistic. That success wasn't for people like me. That survival was all I should aim for. A ripple moved through the crowd. Mr. Hawthorne's brow furrowed. Lena's gaze found him. Those words didn't disappear when the bell rang, she said. They followed me for years. His posture stiffened. Words can break someone, Lena continued, voice steady. Or they can reveal who someone really is. Silence filled the room. After the talk, students crowded around her. "That was amazing," one said. "I didn't know you could do that without college," another added. Lena smiled, answering patiently. Across the room, Mr. Hawthorne watched, unease settling in his chest. Later that afternoon, the principal gathered the staff. "I want to thank Lena again," she said. "Her company has agreed to sponsor several new student programs." Applause echoed. "And as many of you know," the principal added, voice lowering slightly, "budget restructuring has been finalized." Mr. Hawthorne felt his stomach drop. The meeting ended quickly. 2 days later, he sat across from the principal, hands folded tightly. "I've given this school 20 years, he said quietly. "I know," she replied. "This wasn't easy." He packed his belongings in silence that afternoon. Each item he placed into the box felt heavier than the last. At home, the walls felt unfamiliar. Empty. He scrolled through job listings late into the night. Rejections piled up quickly. One listing caught his eye. Carter Solutions. He stared at the name. The memory hit him all at once. The girl in the back of the class, standing awkwardly, clutching her notebook. No. He clicked the profile photo. It was her. His chest tightened. He applied anyway. Days later, Lena saw the application. Her breath caught. She closed her laptop and stared out the window for a long time. "Bring him in," she said finally. When Mr. Hawthorne walked into her office, he stopped mid-step. The confidence he once wore so easily was gone. Lena stood. Recognition flickered across his face, then shock. "You," he said. "Yes," she replied. They sat in silence. "I was wrong," he said finally. "About you. About a lot of things." "You weren't wrong about one thing," Lena said. "Words do shape lives." He lowered his gaze. "I didn't think you'd remember," he admitted. Lena's voice was calm. "I never forgot." The air between them thickened. "So why am I here?" he asked. Lena leaned back, studying him. "That," she said softly, "depends on what you've learned." The silence between them stretched longer than either of them expected. Mr. Hawthorne sat stiffly in the chair across from Lena's desk, his hands folded so tightly his knuckles had gone pale. The office around them was modern and bright, nothing like the classrooms he'd ruled for decades. Glass walls. Clean lines. Quiet power. Lena watched him carefully. This man had once towered over her with certainty. Now he avoided her eyes. "I've replayed that day more times than I can count," he said finally, his voice lower than she remembered. "I didn't think my words mattered. I thought I was preparing students for reality." Lena leaned forward slightly. "Whose reality?" He flinched. "I believed success was rare," he admitted. "That it followed patterns. Backgrounds. Resources. I thought telling the truth, my version of it, was doing my job." "And when the class laughed?" Lena asked quietly. "Was that part of the lesson too?" He swallowed hard. "No." She nodded slowly. "I went home that day and cried until I couldn't breathe. Not because I failed, but because someone in power decided I would." He closed his eyes. "I didn't remember your name," he said. "But I remembered the type. Or at least I thought I did." Lena stood and walked to the window. The city stretched below, alive and moving. For a long time she said nothing. "You weren't the reason I succeeded," she said at last. "But you were the reason I stopped asking for permission." He looked up, surprised. "I stopped waiting for approval," she continued. "I stopped needing someone like you to believe in me." "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "Not because you proved me wrong. But because I hurt someone who didn't deserve it." Lena turned back to him. "This interview isn't about whether you need a job," she said. "It's about whether you understand the weight of what you carry." He nodded. "I do now." She studied him for a long moment, then sat back down. "I won't hire you," she said calmly. His shoulders sagged. "But," she added, "I won't destroy you either." He looked up, confused. "You don't belong here," Lena said. "This company is built on lifting people who've been told they're not enough. You spent years doing the opposite." He lowered his head. "I understand. But," she continued, "there's a nonprofit we support. They work with teachers, mentors, and schools, training them to recognize potential without bias." He looked at her sharply. "They need people who've made mistakes," she said. "People willing to unlearn." She slid a card across the desk. "If you want to teach again," she said, "start there. On their terms." His hands trembled as he picked up the card. "You don't owe me this," he said. "I know," Lena replied. He stood slowly. "You became exactly what I said you couldn't." No, she corrected gently. I became what I decided to. He nodded once, deeply, then turned and walked out. Lena remained seated long after the door closed. That evening she drove home to her mother's apartment. The same one, though now the lights were brighter and the fridge was full. Her mother listened quietly as Lena told her everything. And how do you feel? Her mother asked when she finished. Lena thought for a moment. Lighter. Her mother smiled. Then you chose right. Weeks later, Lena stood in a different auditorium, speaking again, this time to teachers. Students don't forget what you say, she told them. Especially when you speak with certainty. Be careful what you decide for them. In the back of the room, Mr. Hawthorne listened quietly, taking notes. Lena never spoke to him again. She didn't need to. Years passed. Lena's company grew. So did her influence. Scholarships were funded. Programs expanded. Students who'd been told they were nothing stood on stages of their own. Sometimes, late at night, Lena thought back to that classroom. To the girl standing alone while laughter filled the room. She wished she could tell her something. She smiled softly. You made it. And no one got to decide that but you. If this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Like the video if you believe words can change lives. And comment below, what would you have done in her place?